think in fairness to everybody, just note it at the beginning that we are planning to record. Is Christine Mahler on yet?
I am, Doug.
Okay.
Just getting my Zoom camera set up and everything.
How long is this one?
So who's going to do our, Roxanne, did you want to be our kickoff then, or?
Yeah, I'm going to moderate and just move us through the agenda themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't deal with it. Yes.
Love you. Bye.
And I see we've got Representative Wicks is already on. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Representative Rule is already here. Great.
Good morning.
Good morning. Right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started right at 8 because we have a ton of things to cover this morning. So good morning and welcome to everyone. I am Roxanne Miles, the Washington Recreation and Parks Association Legislative Chair this year. Just want to note for everybody that we are recording this morning, and I want to thank you all because time is precious and we appreciate that everyone is here this morning, especially our House representatives who are serving and legislating at this very unusual time in our history, and we really appreciate you joining us this morning for this discussion. So of course, as most people have, we just want to ask you to go ahead and mute so there's no distraction, but go ahead and use the chat function. I'll be keeping an eye on that, as well as WRPA staff who are on this call as well. So we will use any kind of openings in time, as well as bring forth the questions and answers as we move towards the end of the hour. There's a timeline that we're going to try to follow here and keep, and that'll be my main job after I turn this over, is just reminding who's up next and to try to make sure we have time to really hear what is important and what's going on in the capital budget this year, and also some of the representatives' perspectives on other legislation that impacts outdoor recreation. So with that, as we get ready to cover our first item, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to WRPA's president, Paul Simmons, and he'll be followed by Christine Mahler, who is with Washington Wildlife and Recreation Coalition. So Paul, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Roxanne, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. As Roxanne said, my name is Paul Simmons. I'm the current president of the Washington Recreation and Parks Association. It's been a very interesting year to be president, to say the least. It wasn't the one I was expecting when I signed up, but lots of great things have happened this year. And so we're excited and optimistic about the future. You know, as recreation professionals, we've never been more aware of how instrumental nature, outdoor recreation, and social connections are to our quality of life. We provide access to spaces and places where people can reflect and re-energize, where everyone is welcome regardless of age or social or economic status, and where a sense of community is created. All necessary foundations for good mental health for the folks living in our communities. Parks and public spaces were cherished and utilized over the last year like never before, and the increasing demand on the system came at a time when resources to manage the system were not only threatened, but dramatically diminished. This is not new. Many parks and recreation systems were slow to return to full service after the financial decline of 2008. In fact, some of them haven't fully recovered. Yet use grew exponentially for most of the providers between 2014 and 2019. And then in 2020, our trails and parks saw record-breaking use, which continues to grow as people cling to the outdoors. The COVID-19 pandemic has taught and reinforced important lessons for Washingtonians. We've gained a newfound appreciation of the critical role that parks and public health plays in our society, and we've seen tremendous value that people place on having local parks, trails, and open spaces close to home. This pandemic has also highlighted and elevated our understanding of the inequities in access and quality of park systems across the state. Many park systems entered 2020 with major maintenance and operation backlogs before COVID-19 and are experiencing exacerbated funding deficits since then. Depending on the funding structure of the park system, cities and park districts are being forced to reduce access and services due to reductions in their single source of earned revenues and issues such as pro-rationing. Parks and Recreation is much more than fun and games. We provide critical support for youth development and senior services, promote preventative and restorative physical and mental health, and we boost travel and tourism. Local parks are an equal access destination and experience for all segments of society, regardless of income, race, religion, or sexual orientation. When you look at local parks through a social justice and equity lens, they shine brightly. And support for capital reinvestment and maintenance and operations can ensure more parks and trails are being built and maintained in high-need communities. The positive attributes of local parks, combined with the challenges that go with maintaining and preserving them, help form the foundation for WRPA's 2021 legislative agenda and priorities, which are centered around COVID-19 recovery, equity, and ways to restore the economic and health and social vitality of all Washington communities. I want to just highlight just a couple of key bills that we are advocating for this year, and thank Representative Wicks, who's on the call with us, and Representative Eslick for supporting our local parks funding option bill. You know, we've had this going and just barely missed last year, and we are eager to move forward again. We're also asking for $140 million for the WWRP. We're grateful for the governor's $100 million in the budget, but we want to first and foremost preserve that, but we're also hoping for more at that $140 million level. We're grateful for the youth athletic facilities, $11.2 million, and the $9.1 million for the aquatic lands enhancement account, or ALEA. One of the new items on our agenda this year is that we are pushing for a $200,000 allocation in the capital budget to support statewide multimodal trails database. This is really critical as the counties, you know, our GIS systems don't always talk to each other on the local level, which makes regional and statewide planning for trails really challenging and complicated. And we think there would be a much better coordinated approach to developing these very highly used trails and cherished spaces across the state if we can get a little bit more coordinated planning. And then also another newer item that has popped to our legislative agenda this year is the Parks RX, which is something new that we're very excited about. So just in conclusion, we need to continue to invest in our parks. They're so important on so many levels. I want to thank the representatives and folks that are on the call this morning. I want to thank our partners in WWRC and our other state agencies that are on the line today. And I'll kick it back to Roxanne so we can move through the agenda. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Paul. Christine, did you have some opening comments you want to share now?
Great, thanks, Roxanne. I want to really thank our partners at WRPA for setting up these briefings. I know there was a lot of work put into it and a lot of moving pieces, and we really appreciate their partnership on all things around our annual legislative day and throughout the year. They are wonderful partners and really are the boots on the ground for a lot of the work that we do. Here at the Washington Wildlife and Recreation Coalition, we work very closely with our local parks partners, and Paul really summarized the needs and the importance of funding right now for our local parks partners. And Paul really hit the nail on the head in terms of the critical nature of that. So I pretty much second everything Paul already said. But I also want to emphasize the importance of the Washington Wildlife and Recreation Program and other efforts, not just for our critical local parks and trails, but also for our environment and for our economy. The Washington Wildlife and Recreation Program, or the WWRP, provides critical funding for agencies around the state to preserve and protect environmental habitat for our for game animals and for all species around the state that really provide unique recreation opportunities, whether it's for hunting and fishing or just wildlife viewing, birding. You know, without these projects, our state would be a lot less beautiful and be a lot less diverse. So I really want to emphasize that. And our economy. Without the outdoor recreation economy, our state would be in a lot worse straits right now, even with COVID, than it is right now. The outdoor recreation economy is critical to our state. It provides somewhere around 264,000 jobs. That's more than the aerospace or technology sectors, believe it or not. So it's going to be a critical part of recovery as well. So I just want to emphasize that this year, the coalition and our partners at WRPA are asking the legislature for $140 million for the WWRP in this capital budget, which will fund projects all across the state. And as Paul already mentioned, the surge in demand that we saw during COVID is just, it's a good forecast of what we can expect every year with our growing population. So it's really important that we invest now to meet those growing demands. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge that despite the fact that the outdoors are open to all and one of the most, our parks are one of the most critical elements for people of all backgrounds, we do want to recognize that there are equity issues in the outdoors as well as in all areas of our society. So we really welcome the opportunity to participate in an in-depth review of our grant programs here at the state level to ensure that the program serves all Washingtonians that are going forward. We're working with partners to really identify the best way forward on that and look forward to participation in that. So with that, I want to pass back over to Roxanne and our legislators.
Great, thank you so much, Christine. And this morning, we really appreciate that many of the representatives we know have set aside little slivers of time. So we want to turn this over for remarks to Representative Cindy Ryu, which I know is going to need to leave us shortly, and she chairs the Outdoor Recreation Funding Roundtable. So Representative Ryu.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. I am Cindy Ryu, representing the 32nd Legislative District, but also chairing the new Committee on Community and Economic Development, which includes state parks, which is great. So we started meeting at the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable starting in December of 2019, and little did we know that things would change so much over those few months. Obviously, all the points that Christine talked to about the need for the outdoor recreation, from COVID-19 social distancing to population increase, as well as, of course, the disparate effects of COVID-19, but also access by the different communities definitely are the solutions that we are looking for. And I'm approaching the outdoors recreation as part of the solution. And as you know, Tourism Marketing Authority, we had no choice but to necessarily pivot from external visitors, marketing to external visitors, to in-state tourism, at least for the time being. But hopefully that will help us strengthen our beautiful outdoor recreation opportunities. So regarding the community and economic development, I appreciate the long-term funding work group continuing to work during this session in spite of the hectic pace of our session. And shout out to Andrea Imler of the Trails Association, working so well with Wendy Muzzy of the Trust for Public Lands. And so definitely very excited to look forward to the long-term funding mechanism. We're identifying the mechanisms for further research as well as for proposals, eventual proposals. And of course, at that time, we will need everyone's enthusiastic support. So thank you so very much for all your work and attention to this matter.
Wonderful. Thank you, Representative Ryu. Very important, I think, as you note, everybody is working together on this, working towards those solutions, and we really appreciate the work that you have done in working alongside with and leading us in this effort. So thank you. Next, we'd like to turn the floor over to Representative David Hackney for remarks.
And
Good
I
morning.
see,
This is Representative David Hackney, the 11th Legislative District, which is the Georgetown and South Park neighborhood of Seattle, as well as Tukwila, Renton, parts of Kent, and unincorporated King County. I'm very excited to be here with this group. I am the Vice Chair of the Capital Budget Committee, and I see my first Vice Chair Callum and Chair Theringer are also here to join me, and I look forward to supporting your work this session.
Great, thank you so much. We appreciate you making some time to join us, Representative Hackney, on this important work. So also Representative Mike Still has joined us, and we'd love to hear a few remarks as he is the House Capital Budget Ranking Member. And I believe Representative Abernaro might be on as well.
Good morning. Thank you. I don't know if my Assistant Ranking Member Barno is going to join us this morning, but hopefully he can be here. But I just want to say, you know, I think most folks on this call know that in my day job, I run the Lake Chelan Chamber of Commerce, and in my district, outdoor recreation is paramount. And I would just note for the folks on the call, the 12th legislative district tends to really enjoy things like RCO and WWRP. We do a lot of projects, a lot of good projects throughout the district. And because of such a recreationally focused community, you know, we like to say we are the place where all of Washington comes to play. And we certainly benefit from recognizing that. I want to thank Paul for his comments. I think you know, he's exactly right that outdoor rec does not discriminate, and nor should it. And we need to make sure we create opportunities for all of Washingtonians to enjoy the outdoors. And I want to thank the chair of the committee, Representative Theringer, for working with me and alongside me as we look to fund projects across Washington. We appreciate the asks that have been made, and we know how important outdoor rec is to all of Washington. So we'll continue to work toward that effort and fund as many projects as we can. Interesting year, of course, as we balance the needs of COVID response and outdoor rec. And we've been through the whole of the capital budget at this point at least once. Lots of long hours and lots of work already, but we're excited to continue the focus on making sure that those pots of money like the RCO and WWRP are as funded as best they can be. So thank you for holding this forum this morning. Thank you for all of you who are involved in this, and thank you for supporting the tremendous work that Outdoor Rec and all of the associated agencies and parks that correspond to that are the work they're doing. So thank you so much. And thank you to Representative Ryu for her chairing of the Outdoor Recreation Caucus and for her leadership, and appreciate being here this morning. Thank you.
No, thank you. Absolutely. We appreciate that, Representative Steele. You know, and as everyone's noting, the list for all the grants or the applications is a pretty broad list, and it goes across the state in large and small communities, large and small projects. And all those projects are tied so deeply to our community's quality of life, as well as the economy, because everyone loves those assets in their own community, but it is a huge draw. As you mentioned, your community and so many others are places where people really love to play. And I think we've realized in the last year how much it's become part of our lifestyle when it's been threatened to be taken away. This time, we'd like to turn the floor over to Representative Steve Theringer and Lisa Cowan of the House Capital Budget, the chair and vice chair.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's nice to be able to make this connection. It's always more fun when we're in person. And I might turn it, I'm Steve Theringer, Chair of the Capital Budget. I represent the the 24th district, arguably the most beautiful district in the state because it's the Olympic Peninsula. It has the Olympic Mountains and the Pacific Coast and the Straits. And, you know, you people that live in Seattle, you get to see my district a lot. I think this morning you might get a nice view as the sun comes up and hits the Olympic Mountains. But I'd like to turn it over to my vice chair, Representative Callan, and have her maybe make some comments, and then I'll back clean up and kind of fill in the spaces. I do want to shout out my appreciation for Representative Steele as the ranking member. We, as you folks know, we develop our capital budget in a very bipartisan way, and he and his ranking, as assistant ranking, Urbano from the 22nd or 21st is also a great partner as we work through these issues, and they understand these issues well. So I want to turn it over to Representative Callan, and then I'll back clean up, maybe.
Thank you, Rep. Theringer, greatly appreciate it. Lisa Callan, stepped into second vice chair role last year, and am thrilled to be able to be vice chair again this year on Capitol. I serve the 5th legislative district, which starts in Issaquah and goes to the top of Snoqualmie Pass and picks up all of the Snoqualmie Valley and all the wonders there, and heads south down to just north of Enumclaw. So like all of you, we have wonderful outdoor spaces and beauty. You know, we can tell when we're in our Capitol meetings how we argue over who's got the best view and the best spot, and all of the wonders that we share. And one of the great things around my district, of course, is that the quick access, you know, to the great trails and what we have in the Issaquah Alps and starting into the Snoqualmie Pass, where I learned to start my rock climbing days and bouldering, and did all my training for climbing Rainier and doing all of the outdoor activities that I've done in my life. So I'm thrilled to be here. I'm anxious to see what all we can do with this year's budget to continue to support WWRP objectives and where we want to go, the RCO, all of that work. And, you know, really it is the outdoors that have helped us manage and get through the insanity of this pandemic in so many ways. And we've just seen how that has been such a grounding force for this state in every part of the state. And I appreciate all of the energy and effort you put into it. Greatly appreciate my my colleagues, Rep. Hackney and Rep. Urbano, Rep. Steele, of course, and great thanks to Rep. Ryu for her leadership on the work group, and continue to be thrilled to do this deep work with all of you this year. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative Callan. I just want to highlight a little bit, and I think Roxanne, the 3 bullets you have behind you, I think are really important and are kind of guiding our work as we develop the outdoor piece, recreational piece in the capital budget. I mean, as folks know, about a quarter of our budget goes to K-12 school construction, and then another about a quarter goes to K-12 4-year and 2-year school construction. So almost half the budget goes to school and education, which is, I think, appropriate. But in the capital budget, one of the places within the 3 budgets of transportation and operating where we do accent recreation and outdoors and natural resource investment. And I think the lenses we'll be using are those bullets you have behind you. Social justice and equity will be one. I think economic vitality and the data that's been around for the last few years showing, and as was mentioned, just how important this sector is for
Oh, Representative Theringer, unfortunately.
I mean, I think all of us.
Good. We lost probably the last minute of what you said, if you wouldn't mind reiterating.
Okay, I'm going to try to shout into this microphone. Is that better?
Yeah, it froze on you more, but your sound is great.
Okay, so maybe you don't need to see me, so maybe I'll put my video down and that'll make my audio a little better. I just wanted to say that, you know, those 3, that economic value of investing in recreation and outdoor assets is super important, not only for you know, what it drives in the economy itself as a sector, but I think it helps us attract really high quality, creative folks and labor and people that make our Washington's economy so vibrant. And I think the other piece around, you know, mental health and physical health, the data is very, very strong around that. And I think the virus has shown us that the importance of that. And I think, as you've heard from our budget team, from Vice Chair Callan and Ranking Member, we all understand that, and we all are interested in funding these areas as robustly as we can. You know, we do have a lot of demands on the budget across all the needs of the state, but I think what you're getting a sense is these are priorities for us. We understand the importance of it across the spectrum. I will say some of these, you know, I just this last week actually became aware of the Trust for Public Lands programs around the 10 minutes from Mark. And I think that's so important as we look at some of the equity stuff. Some of you, I think, served on the governor's outdoor recreation task force a few years. The importance of connecting some of our urban areas, some of our underserved areas with the outdoors. And it's hard for them to get up to Snoqualmie or up to Mount Si, but so we need to create some outdoor assets that are close and in their neighborhoods. And I think we will hopefully do that as we apply an equity lens to our work as we develop the capital budget. I think looking at a trail matrix that shows where our trails are and how they connect across the state, I know that's a request. I think that makes some sense. So we'll see how this all develops and what kind of how we balance all the needs that the state has in their capital investments. But I think you've gotten a sense that this group wants to work to address a lot of your issues. And I guess with that, I'll open it up for questions, and I'll take questions. And I think Vice Chair Callan and Ranking Member Steele could pipe in if they're so interested.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, we would definitely recognize that there's a lot of issues before the legislature. I think just one of the core questions is that if capital investment is a big piece of recovery, do you anticipate that these outdoor recreation needs, because they're such a big part of the sector of our economy, to remain kind of equal with some of those other investments, and whether the recommended levels that we're talking about feel out of reach or seem somewhat realistic, given that these projects can help drive economic factors, social justice, and some of the things that you're striving for this session?
Yeah, good question. I think, I mean, since I've been capital budget chair, I think for the last 6 years, I've wanted to reach that $100 million goal for WWRP. We've, you know, bumped up against it, have not made it. 140, to be honest, is a pretty rich ask, but it doesn't hurt to have high aspirations when you're submitting something to the capital budget. So, you know, you're right, Roxanne. We're trying to look at the economic stimulus of the capital budget because of the, you know, the economic impact of the virus. And as we look at some of these projects, we will look to see how, you know, what kind of jobs they'll create and how ready they are to create those jobs in the short term, and then what the long-term effect is to the, you know, the vitality of the state. But I think that's one of the lenses that we'll be using. And I guess the good news is the transportation budget is probably the one that's been most impacted by the virus. The operating budget also has been impacted. Our bond model and the way we construct our budget is over a longer period of time. So it's about as robust as it's been the last couple biennium. The governor's budget is very robust in the capital area. He reaches forward on some of the bond capacity. as we go through the budget, we'll see whether we need to do that. We haven't made that decision yet. But I think the good news is that the budget, just on the basic formula of our bond model, is as robust as it's been the last couple biennium. Now, I don't know if Representative Steele or Callan have any comments, or I think Representative Hackney has probably left.
Yeah, I would just thank the chair for his comments. You know, as important as all of these funds are, we know that 140 million is pretty, as he said, as I will you know, reiterate the comments by the chair, that's a pretty rich ask when we're trying to balance so much across the economy of Washington State, and really looking to the capital budget, as the chair said, as the economic stimulator. And thank you to Representative Callan for helping us remain accountable to the number of jobs we're creating. You know, I mean, that's one of the questions that she continues to kind of reiterate as we develop the capital budget. What is what's shovel ready? What can we get out the door quickly, and who can we put back to work most efficiently? And so that's the lens at which we're looking at things through. But I think you've heard from all of us here today that we value so much the ability of outdoor recreation to spur the economy in Washington State. So it's definitely got a heavy weight toward its in a positive way. We're going to look to fund as much as we can, but I would just like to reiterate that 140 million is a great ask, a little rich, but happy to consider it.
Thank you. Well, you got to ask, right? You know, I think there's another piece that we see emerging, and you had mentioned the difficulty with the transportation budget, and that is just trails and trail systems becoming a huge priority in each community. And the more and more there's alignment between active transportation and the multimodal trails that we do, and the fact that the use that communities are putting on those trails now, not just for their health and well-being, but truly to connect small communities and become the way they go to the store, if not to work. So I think the request about getting a complete database that can be used by state agencies is a way to actually align between the recreational trail plans and the active transportation plans, so that this system can work together a little bit better in the future. I think one, if not the last question, we'll see if something else pops up, but how can we help you, right? This group is definitely preaching to the choir. Everybody on this group, I think, understands the value. So how can we help you during this process before we get to Representative Wicks?
Well, obviously this event today is helpful. It shows the strength of the different coalitions, whether it be, you know, Washington Recreation and Parks Association, WWRP and WWRC. I mean, that's helpful. And I think it might be helpful, as you probably are already doing, to talk with new legislators. There's quite a, you know, we actually have a, you know, it's about a 20-25%, I think, turnover every biennium in the legislature, and that's across, you know, the aisle. Both parties, I think, experience that. So getting them up to speed on what these programs do, the importance of these programs, and I know you guys do a good job about that, but it's still, you know, you can never do too much of that, in my view, and linking the importance of what these investments are, you know, in their communities and what they do for their community, just so they understand that connection. I mean, I've been, you know, a strong proponent of the Olympic Discovery Trail, which I hope a lot of you have used. And Roxanne, it does hit, you know, it started out as, you know, kind of a multimodal investment and also a tourist advantage, but it just becomes so much more. It's an international destination. It's an economic driver. It is still that connectivity among the towns here on the North Peninsula. And it's, you know, it's a stunning trail. So the ability to connect that to things on the Kitsap Peninsula and all the way to the, you know, the Idaho border, I think is just a fantastic concept for Washington in so many ways. So making people aware of these, you know, long-term investments and needs, and the value that they bring is, I think, an important job that I know you guys do, but particularly focusing on some of the new members is I think helpful to bring them up to speed. And I don't know if Representative Callan or Representative Steele have any comments on that of what you guys can do to help us.
I might add, I think you're doing a great job at really explaining and sharing out the impacts of the increased demands that we've seen because of the pandemic, and what does that look like and mean, and what does that translate into? Is that just something that's going to go away, or are we wanting to convert that into, you know, a continued enthusiasm for the outdoors, and how do we really bolster that to tie into all of not only connecting with nature and doing all of those great things, but also, you know, the economic recovery, the stability of the state, and how that all connects in it. So it's connecting those dots, right? And then understanding where we are in our moment in time. And because the wear and tear alone on our trails by the increased capacity, I know I've had a few meetings this week alone that talks about you know, the Trailhead Impacts, and we've talked about how that's affecting neighborhoods, and so people are getting as turned off as they are enjoying. So how do we, you know, we fix that? So that helps me have that conversation around prioritizing when we talk about the long-term viability and growth and where we want to go, and then what we need to have in the pipeline and what we need to do just to meet the current demand.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. You know, I can just speak in Pierce County, we had 1 million more uses on our trails than we did last year. And while people now are so happy to see phase 2 happening and some of the sports coming back, a lot of people did kind of shift and I think get into finding how to put outdoor recreation into their routine. And we're already seeing starting this year. And so even if the phases changes, we're not anticipating that usage goes away. And I think in particular with the YAF cycle coming forward, that the projects are still just as viable as they were before. When they actually get built, whether we're adding something a little different to the design to make sure that some of the protections we now need to have as far as separation, you know, in dugouts or design really accommodate something that we think might be with us for a while, but at the same time, it is so important that we still have these amenities in our community, and even the more mountain biking and dog parks and just places where they can do what they love on a little bit more independent schedule. So I think all of it is definitely working together at this time. And really, we appreciate your feedback and anything else that we can do to help. You know that we're here. Any other questions for them or comments? We have about 5 minutes before we move to the next subject, if anybody wants to take advantage of that.
Roxanne, this is Doug Levy, if I may. I just think that the members have done a really good job covering the spectrum here for us this morning. I want to do a shout out for the Washington Wildlife and Recreation Coalition for the members, not only as just our ongoing partner on all of this, but as we trade places with who's taking the lead in various parts of Great Outdoors Day. Christine Mahler and her team, to your advice, Mr. Chair, are setting up meetings with members all over the state, districts throughout the state, so that we can do the very work you just counseled us on, which is to talk about the importance of outdoor rec and all these accounts and what youth athletic facilities and ALEA and WWRP really buys and provides in all these communities. So I wanted to make sure that we got that kudos in for our partners at the coalition. And on the 4th, while you won't see us on the ground like you normally do, you'll feel us in cyberspace on the Zoom getting around to all those meetings. And thanks to Representative Steele and Hackney, I think are hanging with us, and I know they had other commitments. So we really appreciate you two gentlemen being here.
I do see that something popped up in the chat, and probably a worthwhile comment, just kind of an awareness that not only DNR in the United States Forest Service, but even some of our local paths and trails funds are based on motor vehicle fuel tax. And we know that there's been conversations about transportation budgets and how to maybe change that tax. But the fact that that is one, I know in my case, that was down about 200,000 this year. And that's the FTEs that I have who are maintaining the trail system. So that's a current conversation in our organization. And there are, you know, more multimodal type funds and funding that becomes a little bit more flexible, but to the degree that we're building these systems that fuel tax and gas tax funds are part of either creating or sustaining, when we are building this alignment between our trails and multimodal transportation, it is one that I think we are raising kind of awareness, whether there's a capital fix to that or just something that we're working on together in the future. I think it's going to be there as these non-motorized transportation pathways are put into place, looking at how the operating funds of those are keeping pace with road funds and that flexibility of use. So Jeff, I don't know if I represented that well enough for you and you want to speak to it yourself, you can do so. All right, we thank you.
Yes, you know, like I work on the Olympic Discovery Trail too, as well as the Pacific Northwest Trail, which overlap each other. And again, we look at, once we build these trails and get them in place, we then have to talk about how we're going to maintain them on an ongoing basis. And I work for county government, so it's a big discussion on where the money is going to come to maintain them. And it really helps. The gas tax funds have been helping, including LWCF, you know, which comes from gas royalties. So I think long term, we have to find a way to replace the funding sources if we're going to move away from fossil fuels. And I was wondering, I know there's been discussions about other replacements for gas taxes, and we're hoping that that those include recreation.
Great, thank you.
I mean, it's a great point. I guess I will say that luckily it's not an issue we have to deal with like in this budget in the short term, but as usual, if you've got a long-term view here, and you know, I think that, you know, that is something that we'll need to look at, certainly, because we do, from the federal level down through the state level, most of the gas tax in the capital budget is targeted towards particular programs, whether it's, you know, motor vehicle or off-road vehicles, or motorboat or off-road vehicles. The transportation budget, you know, it's a different story, but long term, I think that's, you're exactly right. And just a shout out, I know the Backcountry Horsemen and have really done a lot of work on our trails. They spend, you know, they help maintain them. I know on the peninsula here for the Olympic Discovery Trail, there's a nonprofit group that really, you know, adopts parts of the trail and maintains it and takes care of it and actually contributes money to some of the capital projects. And that's, you know, I think the other part of this that we maybe haven't talked about is how much community support there is for these investments in these outdoor recreational things. And that's so key, because there's, well, in the capital budget, we just can't pay for that personnel, right? We can pay for the capital investment, but we can't help pay for that maintenance piece. So those organizations are so key in maintaining those assets.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all. Thank you. We really appreciate your insights on the budget and this collaboration I think we've been able to build at the state and local and the nonprofits and everybody who's rallying together. So I think at this time, we're going to go ahead and transition to our final topic before we end with some final Q&A, and that would be having Representative Emily Wicks, one of the sponsors of House Bill 1025, talk a little bit about her perspective on the local parks funding options bill. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you, Roxanne, for hosting us today. And to my fellow legislators, and Paul for your words today, and Rep. Ryu for scooping me up early when I got appointed to get involved in the Recreation Roundtable. I also want to just thank Rep. Eastlick, who couldn't be here today, for her work today, for allowing me to join her in helping our shared communities and communities across Washington with this bill. Also, thank you to Doug, our local leaders across the state, and our Parks and Recreation and Open Space advocates. I know you have worked long before I got involved in this to move it through. So hopefully we'll more than hopefully get it through this year. As all of you know, House Bill 1025 concerns local parks funding. And it's a tool and a resource for our local parks agencies so that they can bring their voters ideas about how to sustainably fund parks and open spaces and trails, especially in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. You know, it enables our local districts to seek a 1/10 of 1 cent sales tax to fund the spaces and the departments that build community, culture, quality of life, and as Paul, you mentioned, youth development. You know, everyone's touched on that today, and I'm just really heartened by all of the comments. It's so critical for our communities. And I know a lot of you can attest in your communities, but in Marysville, Everett, and Tulalip, the Parks Department, even before this pandemic, has just been a really bright light for our communities, providing important opportunities to build physical and mental health and create community and amazing local events to keep us active and improve quality of life. So as many of you know, it received a hearing on January 21st and will likely go to executive session. But I know there's a lot going on in the Finance Committee right now. And so Representative Frame is trying to balance all of those things that are coming through. So I think we need to make sure that we keep the pressure on and keep reminding her how important this is and of the work that was done before this year to move it through. And just, you know, helping our local governments right now is a really big priority for me. We need to make sure we get those resources to them and those tools and those opportunities so that they can rise out of this pandemic, because that's going to be so critical for our state. So I'm so thankful that I've gotten to be part of this roundtable and that I'm getting to learn so much. And, you know, as Rep. Theringer said, you know, getting me on board and helping me understand all the ins and outs is really helpful. And I'm just excited to, you know, get through the pandemic and be able to get out even more and get through session and experience this so I can continue to be a resource and support. But again, Doug, you've been just absolutely amazing in this, helping me walk through the process and get me on board. And I hope we can champion this together this year. So thanks for the opportunity to support you all.
Thank you. Thank you for kind of giving the time to really wrap your head around the issue. And I know that, you know, issues come fast and heavy and to really understand, but you just articulated well why the local jurisdictions need this opportunity to be able to really sustain themselves at the local level. And so the legislative authority is that first piece, and then locally to be able to implement it. Are there any questions that we have for Representative Wicks?
Get it done.
Absolutely. I think
When's the bill signing?
Well, thank you for mentioning what really the next steps are. We do know, we have learned from past sessions, right, that it's got to be ushered all the way through with the finance committees. And the wonderful thing is that there is a companion Senate bill. And we know that's a pretty rare occasion this session, but the fact that it has had bipartisan support and was able to originate it both. So we will be following along right beside you through the process. Absolutely. I think there's a question. Do you believe that there's what is the current support or level of support for the House bill? Do you feel like it does have some good promise, because there is a lot of interest as you are talking with other representatives about it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that go into that. I mean, we have 13 sponsors on this bill, and we also have support in the Senate, which I do think is really important. And I, forgot to mention Representative Vandeweghe and his work on that as well. People see this, and I honestly, after I, provided my testimony in the hearing, not honestly, but I got so many comments of just how thankful they were about reminding me how important our parks are. And so people see this, and again, it's a tool for local communities, and it does put the power with the people to make the decisions on how they want, to fund their government and the resources they have. So I think people get that. And I felt like I got strong support, but I mean, it's anecdotal, I guess, in that sense, from what I'm hearing, but I know this is really important. And I would say the second aspect of it is that I'm a freshman, and that's kind of helpful as we're moving in. I only have 7 bills, and, I'm going to make sure that they get through because I need that support. So I think we have a good shot. But again, I think the tricky part is the competition that we're facing, just with so many things coming in. And, we tried to be really focused this year, but that never happens. I mean, you always see everyone tries to go big every year. We're all going big, even with your capital budget request, right? So I think we just need to keep pushing that through and reminding people how important it is, and that it's not, this doesn't have a high fiscal note or a fiscal note at all. So
absolutely.
If I could jump in and just tell those that are still here, the first thing is that Representative Wicks and Representative Eslick went up together and testified on this bill in front of the Finance Committee. I thought that was really powerful. And then the second thing is that Representative Dufault, who is a Republican member from the 15th district on the other side of the state, took it upon himself to comment and say that Representative Wicks had just set an extremely high bar for any new member testifying before a committee, that it was going to be difficult to do any better than she'd just done. So we really thank Representative Wicks, and I think all of these capital budget members, they're the ones who carry the torch on this stuff.
Great. I'd also, yeah. We just had all that conversation about the capital budget, right? And that huge state investment. So to have a local tool that helps us take care of those assets as they go into place just makes sense, right? To keep those resources moving in companionship, even though that becomes a local decision and local resource. But I think you've probably heard in getting to know all of this as well, we come in all shapes and sizes when it comes to how park systems are administrated at the state, county, and park districts in various levels. So to have a tool like this that actually is flexible to all those shapes and sizes is a huge thing. Because some folks really are, exclusively driven by one type of revenue, and that also makes the system so much more vulnerable. So we really appreciate the latitude that this offers us so that we can respond and take care of those capital investments that are being made into the local community.
Yeah, I love that comment about flexibility and meeting the different needs of the community. I'm going to use that going forward.
Well, I see tons of thanks going on in the chat, and you have just created a whole bunch of fans there, Representative.
Thanks, everyone. You brightened my day.
Are there any questions or comments from representatives or others on the call related to the local funding option? Or I think at this point we want to turn it open to anything, though Representative Wicks won't necessarily be the person on the hot seat to respond to all of them if we go more broadly.
And I think I would just jump in and say, I think we still have Representative Steele here, and appreciate him hanging with us. And so if there are any capital budget related questions, Representative Steele, don't be afraid to jump up and be our subject matter expert on those. Oh, and I see Representative Theringer is hanging with us too. You guys are co-rock stars.
With that, I'd say, Doug, Doug, Christine, Paul, is there any kind of final comments you'd like to make or offer in support to our friends in the House of Representatives?
I just want to thank everyone for their time. I know you're so busy and there's so many things pulling you in so many different directions, and you made time for us this morning. You're supporting our work and championing what we do. It's much appreciated. It's with your help that we're able to serve our communities in the best possible way. So thank you so much for your time. And also Roxanne and Doug and everyone that helped pull this day together. Thank you for all your work bringing things together. You guys did a lot behind the scenes. And WWRC, I got to shout out one more time. I've got the opportunity to work with Christine for several years now, and she always has an amazing team. And thank you, WWRC.
And I'm just going to send the love right back to WRPA. Thank you all for being such great partners. Really love having you serve on the board and working with us every year on this legislative day. Really want to thank all of our representatives for, as Paul mentioned, making the time to be with us here today, and for all of your heavy lifting. We know the capital budget is a complicated and tough prospect, and you're balancing a lot of demands across the state. We know 140 million is an ambitious ask, but you know, it does support our state economy, it supports schools, it supports so much of the other priorities in Washington, which you all know very well, but really appreciate all the work you're doing on that budget. Looking forward to meeting with you next week as part of our legislative day and to be a resource throughout the session. And hopefully once things open up a little bit more, we'll be able to get out and actually tour some of those projects with you yet again. That's always one of my favorite parts of the job. So can't wait to do that again.
I do want to say one more thing, Roxanne. I have a hard time not talking too much, but you know, WRPA has had a long time partner that also has made our work possible, and that's Kayleen Cottingham. I've seen her on the call. She hasn't said much, but she is counting the days towards retirement, and she's been such a great partner for the WRPA, and I just wanted to take this second to express my thanks and gratitude for Kayleen for all the support over the years, and just acknowledge you for the work you've done to build the program that we have today, because it's amazing. So thanks, Kayleen, and we're gonna miss you.
Here, a well-earned but sad day with Kayleen leaving. She's been a great partner, and we literally couldn't be doing what we're doing without her and her great team at RCO. So thank you for everything, Kayleen.
Thank you all. This has been a great call this morning, and a message to all the legislators. If you have any detailed questions about how we do our recruitment, our vetting, our ranking, and administration of any of the grants that we do, we have around 17 different grant programs, all competitive. So just give me a call.
Thanks, Kayleen. Thanks for all your work.
I love that one.
Thanks for all you've done, Kayleen. We really appreciate it. Thank you. And I look forward to working with you for a few more months.
I've targeted my retirement to be at the end of session, hopefully at the end of session, April 30th.
Always a great planner, Kayleen. Always a great planner.
I love that one of the comments in the chat was it was starting to feel like a great big group hug, which is, you know, really the case. But I'd say, I think for us working on the ground, you working in the House, RCO, and how hard they work, the fact that we know each other is as passionate and is working as hard just makes it easier, I think, to keep the fight going and to encourage our staff on the local level to know that we definitely are in this together. All right. Any final comments from our House representatives before we sign off this morning?
I know, just thanks for doing all this work and thanks for inviting us. I think this worked out pretty well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks for the work you're doing. And it's always one of the best areas of the budget when we get into these outdoor rec conversations. It's you know, we know how much it means to everyone in Washington, so it's a fairly easy conversation most of the time. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. All right, round of applause for everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We definitely are here. We are a resource, and as was mentioned, with Great Outdoors Legislative Day, A lot of conversations will happen February 4th, but we'll also be here long beyond that and through April 30th, if not longer, right?
And a quick plug to everyone that we'll be doing this again with Senate leaders on Monday at 8 o'clock. So join us then.
Absolutely. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful Friday and a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.